Imagine stepping into a quiet, abandoned house. The air is dense, carrying a subtle chill that seems to follow you as you move through rooms long untouched. Floorboards creak underfoot, echoing faintly in the emptiness, and shadows stretch along the walls like living shapes. Shifting as your eyes adjust, a draft pushes past you, and for a fleeting moment, you feel it, the sense that you are not completely alone. Perhaps it's your imagination, or perhaps it's something else. Moments like these are both thrilling and unnerving, and they are precisely what draws so many people to explore the paranormal. Many are drawn to ghost hunting, driven by the adrenaline of the unknown, the hope of capturing an unexplained sound, an image, or a fleeting shadow. Television shows, viral videos, and social media have popularized this form of paranormal exploration. It promises excitement and suspense and the possibility, however unlikely, of direct contact with something beyond the ordinary. Yet, while the thrill is compelling, it's not the same as methodical, evidence based paranormal research. Paranormal research is not about the immediate rush of fear or the allure of a viral moment. Instead, it is a disciplined approach to observing, documenting, and analyzing experiences that challenge conventional understanding. Every creak, chill, or visual anomaly becomes a piece of data to examine rather than just a spooky story to share. This is a field where curiosity is married to skepticism, where wonder meets rigor, and where methodical investigation takes precedence over mere entertainment. Structured paranormal research focuses on questions rather than assumptions. What is occurring? And under what circumstances? Can it be measured, recorded, analyzed, or repeated? Are there natural explanations that account for these phenomena? Researchers prioritize evidence and context, always aiming to differentiate between anecdote and anomaly. In this way, paranormal research builds a credible understanding of unexplained events, rather than merely chasing thrills. So, what separates ghost hunting from paranormal research, you might ask? At its core, it's intent and methodology. Ghost hunting often centers around the experience itself. Capturing a sound, seeing a shadow, or feeling a chill. The tools used, from EMF meters to spirit box, are often applied with the goal of finding immediate evidence or creating a dramatic experience. Analysis may be minimal or inconsistent, and the primary focus is usually on entertainment or personal excitement. Paranormal research, by contrast, is systematic and disciplined. Researchers approach investigations with a plan. Observations are treated as data points, and every anomaly is subjected to scrutiny. When a sudden cold spot is reported, a researcher will investigate drafts, HVAC systems, insulation gaps, and external weather conditions. They consider the psychological and cultural influences on perception, such as suggestion, expectation, and local folklore. By incorporating these factors, researchers aim to separate misperception and environmental influence from genuinely unexplained phenomena. A simple illustration is, imagine walking down a long hallway and feeling a sudden chill. A ghost hunter might immediately call it a cold spot and attribute it to spirits. Meanwhile, a paranormal researcher first notes the time, the location, and the environmental conditions. They check for drafts, heating and cooling systems, insulation gaps, or even recent weather changes. They consider whether the perception could be influenced by prior knowledge of the location or local legends, and only after careful documentation, measurement, and analysis might they consider alternative explanations. Ultimately, paranormal research is about understanding rather than merely experiencing. It values systematic observation over sensationalism, evidence over anecdote, analysis over assumption. It requires patience, critical thinking, and a willingness to explore natural explanations before invoking the unexplained. While both ghost hunting and paranormal research engage with the unknown, only the latter builds a structured, verifiable understanding of it. The distinction is subtle but important. Ghost hunting is more about thrill and immediate experience, and paranormal research is more about rigorous observation, documentation, and analysis. Both can be very exciting, but only structured research contributes to credible knowledge, helping us understand and separate the extraordinary from the unexplainable. This approach ensures that when something truly anomalous is observed, it's recognized and evaluated responsibly rather than being lost amid speculation and hype. Now, this isn't to say that ghost hunting is bad in any way. I don't mean to talk down on ghost hunters or other investigation groups in any way. It's just to illustrate the difference between traditional ghost hunting that you would see on TV versus true paranormal research. And welcome back to another episode of They're Still Here. My name is David. I am the founder of Price Paranormal Research Group. And today we are going to dive deep into what paranormal research truly is. So go ahead, strap in, and let's talk about it. Paranormal research in its structured form has roots that stretch back over a century. While people have always told stories of spirits and apparitions and unexplained events, the formal study of these phenomena began in the late 19th century. One of the earliest and most influential organizations dedicated to systematic investigation was the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR. They were founded in London in 1882. The SPR was established by academics, scientists, and philosophers interested in understanding phenomena that defied conventional explanation, such as hauntings, telepathy, and mediumship. Rather than accepting anecdotal claims at face value, the society emphasized rigor, skepticism, and documentation. Investigators carefully recorded interviews, attempted to reproduce phenomena, and maintained detailed records of environmental conditions and witness accounts. Their aim wasn't to prove the existence of spirits, but really to determine whether the claims of those things could withstand scrutiny. And around the same time in the US, the American Society for Psychical Research, or ASPR, was founded in 1884. Now, they pursued similar goals, and they combined environmental monitoring, psychological assessment, and meticulous record keeping to evaluate reports of apparitions, mysterious noises, and other unexplained experiences. These early societies laid the foundation for modern paranormal research by demonstrating that a systematic scientific approach could be applied even to phenomena that seemed inherently mysterious. One notable historical example is the Rectory in Essex, England. It was built in the 1860s and it became famous in the 1920s and 1930s for reports of ghostly figures, unexplained footsteps, and objects moving on their own. Investigators, including the well known paranormal researcher Harry Price, documented these phenomena extensively. Their work included photographic evidence, environmental readings, and interviews with witnesses. Many of the reported occurrences were later explained by structural issues, drafts, and normal environmental factors. But a few subtle anomalies remained unexplained, demonstrating both the complexity and challenges of a credible investigation. Other early cases further illustrate the importance of historical context and structured research. For instance, the Fox sisters in New York, active in the late 1840s, are credited with initiating the spiritualist movement. They reported mysterious rappings in their home, which they claimed were communications from spirits. Now, investigators documented numerous seances and messages, and decades later, the sisters admitted that some of the phenomena were deliberately created through mechanical means, specifically cracking joints in their toes. This revelation underscored the critical need for verification, documentation, and skepticism in the study of the paranormal. Now, across the 20th century, research methods evolved to incorporate emerging scientific tools. Early investigators relied on careful observation and environmental logs, but technology introduced new opportunities for data collection and analysis. Thermal imaging allowed for detection of temperature anomalies invisible to the naked eye. EMF meters helped identify fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, and audio recording devices enabled detailed analysis of sounds and potential EVP, or electronic voice phenomena. Investigators also began using environmental loggers to track temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and other factors over extended periods. Throughout history, cultural and social context has played a critical role in shaping paranormal reports. Local legends, historical tragedies, and architectural failures often influence what people perceive and report. For instance, a centuries old inn with a tragic history may inspire stories of apparitions, while the same environmental conditions in a modern building might go unnoticed. Understanding these factors allows researchers to distinguish between folklore, expectation, and actual phenomena. Historical case studies also emphasize the interplay between observation and explanation. For example, in the Amityville house in New York from 1975, reports included unexplained noises, foul odors, and levitating objects. Careful investigation revealed that the environmental factors like the HVAC irregularities, structural issues, and the psychological stress within the family contributed to many of the reported phenomena. Media coverage further amplified perceptions of the haunting by combining historical research, environmental measurement, and witness interviews. Researchers could parse the extraordinary from the explainable. And then you have the Bell Witch case in Tennessee, and that took place between 1817 and 1821. This is another foundational example. John Bell and his family, they reported knocks and voices and physical disturbances attributed to a spirit. Early accounts were recorded by neighbors and visitors, providing a rich set of observations. Modern analysis suggests that drafts, wildlife, and social belief in spirits likely influence perceptions, while psychological stress heightened sensitivity to ordinary environmental stimuli. These historical examples demonstrate the need for meticulous documentation, critical thinking, and contextual understanding in paranormal research. Now, beyond individual cases, the history of paranormal research illustrates an evolving methodology. Starting with careful observation and anecdotal reporting, moving through structured documentation and environmental measurement, and incorporating scientific and technological tools. Over time, researchers have developed protocols to measure, record, and analyze phenomena objectively while remaining mindful of psychological, social, and cultural influences. This evolution underscores the importance of structured, credible investigation, a standard that remains central to paranormal research today. Even in the 21st century, the principles established by early societies such as SPR and ASPR continue to guide investigators. Modern paranormal research combines environmental science, psychology, historical research, and emerging technology to study phenomena responsibly. While the thrill of exploration might still inspire interest, methodical documentation, ethical considerations, and critical analysis really distinguishes serious researchers from the thrill seekers. Now, paranormal research has a long and varied history, and it's been shaped by investigators dedicated to understanding the unknown. And over the decades, certain individuals and organizations have left a lasting impact on the field, influencing both investigative methods and public perception. Now, I'm going to do some repeating here, but I feel like it's important to do a little bit more of a deep dive on some of these societies and investigators and researchers. And like I said earlier, one of the earliest and most influential groups was SPR, which was founded in London in 1882. Now, that really was the first organization to attempt a systematic and scientific approach to studying phenomena. While at the same time, researchers such as Henry Sedgwick, Frederick W.H. Myers, and Edmund Gurney emphasized careful documentation, structured interviews, and thorough environmental assessment. Their approach was founded on skepticism and rigorous observation, with the goal of not proving or disproving the supernatural, but of determining whether just the claims could withstand the methodical scrutiny. And many early studies were inconclusive, but they established a framework for structured observation, objective reporting, and even transparent methodology, standards that even the modern paranormal researchers still follow today. And then we talked about the ASPR, or the American Society for Psychical Research. Now, they were basically the American version of SPR, right? Now, they sought to really combine the environmental monitoring, the psychological assessment, and the methodical record keeping to evaluate claims of paranormal phenomena. Now, together, SPR and ASPR demonstrated that the study of the unexplained could be pursued in a scientific and disciplined manner rather than relying solely on anecdote or personal testimony. And then you have Harry Price, who was a foundational figure in the early 20th century. His work at the Borley Rectory, which is often called the most haunted house in England, combined photography, audio recording, and environmental monitoring, and interviews with witnesses to provide a comprehensive analysis of reported hauntings. Price documented unexplained sounds, sudden temperature changes, and visual anomalies, while also considering structural issues like creaking floors, faulty plumbing, and drafts. His meticulous approach revealed that many supposedly supernatural events could be explained by natural causes. Though some subtle anomalies remained, that highlighted the challenge of separating folklore and environmental factors from unexplained phenomena. Now, Price also founded the National Laboratory of Psychical Research, a facility dedicated to controlled study of psychic phenomena, and that demonstrated the importance of both fieldwork and experimental observation. Now, if you move into the 20th century, the focus of paranormal research really shifted in part to experimental parapsychology, studying controlled phenomena such as extrasensory perception or ESP, psychokinesis, and telepathy in laboratory settings. Now, Charles H. Honorton, a psychologist and parapsychologist, he played a significant role in this shift, founding the Psychophysical Research Laboratories, or PRL, in Princeton, New Jersey in 1979. Honorton conducted experiments with strict controls designed to minimize bias and maximize repeatability. He pioneered the use of statistically rigorous analysis to evaluate anomalous effects and worked to bring parapsychology closer to recognized scientific methodology. His studies, which included rigorous tests of card guessing experiments, remote perception, and other psi phenomena, emphasize reproducibility and peer-reviewed publication, contrasting sharply with anecdotal or sensationalist investigations often portrayed in the media. Now, it is important, however, to recognize figures like Ed and Lorraine Warren, whose names are widely recognized in popular culture. Now, the Warrens gained fame for investigating high profile cases, including the Amityville House and the Conjuring House. Now, they became central figures in books, documentaries, and films, and while they contributed to public awareness of paranormal investigation, their methods have been widely criticized within the research community. Many critics argue that the Warrens blurred the line between investigation and entertainment, sometimes promoting stories in ways that offered financial gain to themselves or the families involved, allegedly. Now, while their work provides cultural context, it doesn't really exemplify the methodical, evidence driven approach practiced by researchers like Price or Otterton. Now, another influential investigator is Dr. Lloyd Auerbach, and he was a parapsychologist active from the late 20th century, has emphasized the use of scientific methodology combining environmental measurement, psychological analysis, and historical research. He has contributed extensively to the academic study of hauntings, poltergeists, and anomalous research, often publishing work intended for both professional and public audiences. Now, Auerbach's approach highlights that paranormal research can definitely bridge academic rigor and accessible communication, reinforcing the importance of method and skepticism. Now, from the structured investigations of SPR and ASPR to the meticulous field work of Harry Price, the experimental rigor of Charles Otterton, and the scientific emphasis of modern parapsychologists like Dr. Auerbach, these figures illustrate the diversity and the evolution of paranormal research. They collectively underscore the central principles of credible study, systematic observation, critical analysis, rigorous documentation, and an ongoing balance between curiosity and skepticism. Through examining these pioneers, it becomes clear that paranormal research is not simply about documenting ghost stories or capturing sensational moments. It's about pursuing knowledge responsibly, critically evaluating phenomena, and contributing to a body of understanding that respects both evidence and human experience. Their achievements remind us that methodical research, ethical practice, and thoughtful interpretation are hallmarks of credibility in this field. Now, in paranormal research, the use of tools and technology is essential, but it's equally important to understand their limitations. Tools don't prove the existence of paranormal phenomena, but they do provide data that can be analyzed and contextualized. The misinterpretation of data, misuse of devices, or a lack of understanding about natural environmental variables can lead to false conclusions. One of the foundational principles in structured research is the careful and responsible use of investigative tools, just like you wouldn't use fire to try to create ice. So let's dig into a few of them. So we're going to start with one of the more popular, the EMF meter. So the EMF meter or electromagnetic field meter, they're probably the most recognizable tool in paranormal research. They detect fluctuations in electromagnetic field, which can sometimes correlate with the perception of unusual phenomena. High or rapidly changing EMF levels have been linked in research to feelings of unease, dizziness, or even sensations of being watched. However, EMFs are ubiquitous in modern environments. Wiring issues, fluorescent lighting, household appliances, and even nearby power lines can produce readings that might seem anomalous at first glance. Even the air conditioner unit that sits outside of your home They can put off an EMF level that's high enough to create some of these feelings. So, to use EMF meters effectively, investigators establish baseline measurements over time, noting typical fluctuations within a space. This baseline allows them to distinguish between normal environmental variations and potential anomalies that warrant further investigation. And then you have the idea of thermal imaging. Now, this has revolutionized environmental monitoring and paranormal research. These cameras detect infrared radiation, revealing temperature differences that are invisible to the human eye. Sudden cold spots or warm spots are often cited as evidence of spirits or energy anomalies. But most temperature changes can be explained by drafts, poorly insulated walls, or even HVAC systems. The key to effective use of thermal cameras is longitudinal observation, or recording temperature over time, and that helps identify patterns, such as a recurring cold spot near a vent or a window, which might otherwise be misinterpreted as supernatural. Investigators combine thermal readings with visual documentation, and they note environmental conditions at the time of the measurement to provide context. And then you have digital audio recorders. So, EVPs are perhaps the most discussed evidence in paranormal investigations. These are sounds captured on an audio device that some interpret as voices or messages from an unseen presence. Now, successful EVP analysis requires careful listening, software analysis, and environmental awareness. So you've got to look at background noise, interference from electronics, or audio auditory pareidolia, or the brain interpreting random sounds as speech. This can easily create misleading results, and analysts often isolate specific frequency ranges, repeated recordings under conditions, and they cross reference the data with environmental logs. This rigorous approach reduces false positives and ensures that any claims of anomalous audio are grounded in reproducible evidence. Now, you also have infrasound. Infrasound refers to sound waves below the range of human hearing, typically below 20 hertz. And despite being audible, infrasound can affect the body and the mind, producing sensations of anxiety, dread, nausea, or even visual disturbances. Infrasound can be generated by a wide variety of sources: natural phenomena like wind and ocean waves, mechanical sources such as HVAC systems or fans, and human activity like nearby traffic or trains. During investigations, detecting and measuring infrasound helps investigators determine whether unsettling experiences are environmentally induced rather than being paranormal. Now, if you're going to look into an SLS camera, SLS cameras are a camera that uses an infrared grid to map a room in 3 dimensions. They can capture shapes and outlines that are invisible to the naked eye. Now, a good way to kind of imagine this if you've never seen it, think about the old Xbox 360 when they came out with the Kinect. The Kinect is basically an SLS camera. And actually, a lot of investigation groups and even myself, we've taken the SLS camera or the Kinect camera and turned it into an SLS camera using software. Now, these devices are visually impressive, but they're highly sensitive to environmental factors. So, like reflections, shadows, and uneven surfaces can create the illusion of figures or anomalies. I mean, mine has picked up a stick figure on a TV tray before. So, researchers mitigate a lot of these issues, though, by corroborating SLS data with other tools, such as thermal imaging or standard video recording. And they also ensure multiple angles and repeated observations. And you have to contextualize SLS readings so you can avoid drawing conclusions based solely on a single device's output. Environmental loggers are devices that continuously record temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and EMF levels over time. They provide a comprehensive picture of environmental conditions, excuse me, and help identify patterns that may correlate with reported phenomena. For example, a sudden chill reported by witnesses might align with a spike in infrasound or a fluctuation in HVAC operation. Baseline data is critical, and without it, investigators risk misattributing normal environmental variability to paranormal causes. By combining multiple forms of data, researchers can more reliably separate natural occurrences from potentially unexplained events. So perhaps the most important tool in any investigator's toolkit is documentation. Every observation, every reading, and subjective experience should be recorded. Even personal sensations, such as like a feeling of unease or a sudden temperature change, or feeling like you're being watched, or catching something out of the corner of your eye. These are valuable data points when they're logged properly. So, a good way to do that is to take precise timestamps for all measurements and observations, exact spots within the property. And if you're not entirely sure how to really describe that, take a picture. Take a picture of exactly where you were standing. Make sure you document your temperature and your humidity, your light levels, your EMF. If there is an experience, take down the witness accounts, the firsthand descriptions of the experiences recorded in their own words, they're invaluable. And then any connections between environmental changes and reported phenomena, that's something that you definitely want to keep track of. Always, always, always. If you are on an investigation, be sure you are carrying a notebook with you, a little notepad. Make sure that you have a watch, not a smartwatch. Personally, I would recommend using just a little Casio watch or something that you can get from Walmart. Something basic that just tells you the time and date. Now, by integrating multiple tools, researchers can correlate data points to environmental explanations while also minimizing the risk of misinterpretation. When unexplained anomalies remain, they can be highlighted as areas for further study without jumping to sensational conclusions. Structured research combines multiple devices through documentation and repeated observation to build a credible understanding of reported phenomena. Proper use of tools transforms anecdotal reports into analyzable data. And that's exactly what we're looking for because that is what creates the foundation for evidence based paranormal investigation and research. In paranormal research, one of the most important steps is considering natural explanations before attributing events to supernatural causes. Many experiences that seem unexplainable at first, cold spots, strange sounds, flickering lights, sensation of being watched, or even seeing a ghost. They often have perfectly reasonable explanations rooted in environmental, physiological, or even psychological factors. Understanding these explanations is essential for credible research, and it helps distinguish genuine anomalies from misperceptions or natural phenomena. So, we're going to dive back in a little bit to infrasound and low frequency vibrations. So, as I said earlier, infrasound is generally below 20 hertz. And even though it's inaudible, the vibrations can affect the human body in significant ways. It can produce sensations of anxiety, feelings of dread, nausea, dizziness, and even mild visual distortions. One of the most well-known studies on infrasound was conducted by Dr. Vic Tandy in the 90s, and he was working in a laboratory in Coventry, England. Tandy noticed a recurring feeling of unease and a sensation that a presence was in the room, and eventually he discovered that a resonance frequency of 19 hertz caused by a fan in the laboratory was producing the effects. This low frequency vibration explained the haunted sensation experienced by him and others, and it demonstrated how environmental factors can mimic paranormal experiences. Now, infrasound isn't just created by mechanical means, it can also be contributed to by ocean waves crashing against the shore, a strong wind that passes through a building or tree, earthquakes, minor tectonic activity. And then you get into the more mechanical, where it's industrial machinery, fans, HVAC systems, heavy trains, traffic, or other transportation. Now, during an investigation, you should be using infrasound detectors to measure vibrations in spaces where activity is reported. And if it's present, it can provide a credible natural explanation for feelings of unease or phantom sensations. Now, one of my personal favorites is the idea of pareidolia. It's the brain's way to make sense of nonsense. Now, pareidolia, it's the human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns such as faces, figures, or words in random stimuli. This psychological phenomenon, it's a survival mechanism. Early humans benefited from recognizing threats quickly, and in modern contexts, however, it can create convincing but misleading sensory experiences that appear paranormal. So, some examples of that would be like seeing faces or figures in shadows, curtains, reflections, hearing words or phrases in static, white noise or audio recordings, and interpreting dust particles or insects or light reflections as orbs in photographs. Now, you can mitigate the influence of pareidolia by cross referencing eyewitness accounts with recorded visual or auditory data and by using multiple forms of documentation. Now, you can combine human perception and objective measurements, and that'll allow you to distinguish between misperception and phenomena. And for instance, one thing that really helps is, especially when you're using like a spirit box, a good way to mitigate pareidolia in that is to use what's called the Estes method. Now, the Estes method is basically, someone's blindfolded, they put noise canceling headphones on, and those headphones are connected to the spirit box. And they are basically the conduit for what you are getting as a response, right? So you have someone asking questions, but the person listening to the spirit box can't hear the questions, and all they do is shout out the words that they hear. Now, is it a perfect system? No, but it mitigates a lot of, especially confirmation bias and the pareidolia that you can get by knowing what questions are being asked. Now, EMF fields, there are both natural and man-made reasons for that, but it can seriously influence human physiology. So research has shown that higher fluctuating EMF levels can create headaches, migraines, dizziness, disorientation, sleep disturbances, paranoia, a feeling of being watched or followed. And during investigations, you use an EMF meter to identify fluctuations and you establish baseline readings because that's a crucial step. And you have to look for, normal environmental variations from wiring, appliances, or nearby power sources and they can create misleading results if they're not accounted for. And the same thing kind of goes into temperature and air pressure and drafts. Cold spots are frequently cited as paranormal presence. But in reality, temperature variations are almost always due to natural causes. Drafts from an open window, poorly sealed doors, air movement through ventilation systems, or structural irregularities, you know. And barometric changes can also affect human perception. They can produce sensations like sudden chills, shortness of breath, and general unease. And then you have the idea of carbon monoxide and other chemicals, right? So carbon monoxide, it's often overlooked in supposed hauntings, right? So it's odorless and colorless, but it can cause hallucinations, feelings of dread, headaches, and nausea. In older buildings with faulty furnaces or poor ventilation, entire households have reported hauntings that were later attributed to elevated carbon monoxide levels. So you should always routinely check for carbon monoxide and other chemical hazards before labeling experiences as paranormal. And you have to ensure safety and you have to rule out environmental toxins to protect both the investigators and the occupants. Now, human perception in these cases is inherently subjective. Cognitive factors can strongly influence reports of paranormal activity. So, some things to take into consideration are suggestion and expectation. Belief in a haunted location can heighten sensitivity to ordinary sounds or stimuli, leading to misinterpretation. Memory, stressful or emotionally charged situations can cause witnesses to exaggerate or misremember or reinterpret. Now, that's not to say that they're lying, but it's just normal. Our memories can be fallible. And the other thing that you really have to look into is peer influence or group dynamics. So it can be amplified, or it can amplify perceived phenomena if there's a group of people that start to talk about it back and forth and start to really, dig into it. It results in a form of mass suggestion. Now, natural explanations, they form the backbone of credible paranormal research because you take in, human perception and environmental variables and you look at historical and cultural context. You can oftentimes reduce false positives and focus on genuinely unexplained phenomena. We're going to dive into ethics in this next section. Now, these are central to paranormal research. Unlike casual ghost hunting, structured research often involves living people, private property, and sensitive experience. Ethical considerations to ensure that investigations are not only credible, but respectful, safe, and scientifically responsible. They're not optional. They are fundamental to the integrity of the field. And before you enter any location, the number one thing that you should do, that you have to do, is you must secure permission from the property owners or stakeholders. If you enter a site without consent, it's not only unethical, but also illegal. It's always best, whether you're going to a private residence, a historical site, or public building, or a shared space of any kind, you should always, always, always get written permission. And by obtaining that permission, you're demonstrating respect for people and property. This establishes trust, and it's a critical foundation for reliable research. Another crucial piece of information is you always have to be transparent. So you must always communicate clearly about what methods you're using. Explain what equipment will be used, what types of data you're going to be collecting, and the procedures that you follow during the investigation. Make it clear that not every anomaly will have an explanation and that the goal is understanding, not confirmation. And participants should know that some experiences may be explained by natural factors and that subjective sensations are documented alongside environmental data. Providing context, it prevents misunderstanding, it reduces anxiety, and it maintains professionalism. For example, in cases where EMF detectors are used, participants should understand that these readings reflect environmental electromagnetic activity, which may or may not correlate with personal experiences. Many people reporting paranormal experiences are in vulnerable emotional states. They may be grieving, fearful, or even under stress. So it's important to validate their experiences without judgment, and you never want to sensationalize what is reported to gain attention or to create viral content. And you should explain how investigations proceed and what steps are taken to ensure safety, accuracy, and if they ask for it, discretion. Respectful engagement encourages participants to provide accurate information and it contributes to your research. Accurate and meticulous documentation is huge for scientific credibility. Ethical researchers, they always ensure that they're consistent. So all of your observations, readings, and subjective experiences are logged in a standardized manner. You have to make sure that your data is accurate, that it's recorded precisely with dates, times, environmental conditions, and observer notes. You have to make sure that they're stored securely. All your logs, recordings, images, videos, and you cannot alter or manipulate them in any way. Even if you're going to edit it to put it up online, you should always maintain a raw original copy. And transparency is a big deal. Any anomalies, errors, or inconsistencies should be documented and openly acknowledged. If you have a cough, if you say something out loud, if you make a noise during an EVP session, you should claim it. You should say, that was me. Or, for instance, I would say, that was David. That way people know it's me. I don't want that to be mixed in to our data. Now, when you present findings, you have to do that just as ethically because it is just as important as collecting them. So you have to provide context. You have to include your environmental readings, your baseline measurements, any historical factors, and even the psychological considerations alongside observations. You have to avoid sensationalism. It may be exciting, but you have to make sure that you're not exaggerating anomalies or implying certainty where none exists. You have to be objective. You have to distinguish fact from speculation. You have to clearly separate documented events from theories or hypotheses. So you may think this is what it is, but you have to say, hey, we have a temperature drop here that we could not explain. But that's it. You don't say, hey, yeah, the ghost caused this. There's no certainty there. You didn't catch a ghost in a jar. And if you're publishing or sharing your results, you have to ensure that the sensitive information about the participants or the private property is protected. Now, one great way to do that is to have a digital media release form that they can tell you what they want shown, what they want shared, what they don't. And ethical reporting, it maintains credibility within both the public and research community. And it's very important. And ethical research, it extends beyond the immediate investigation. You should always follow up. You should provide the participants and the clients with findings and explanations and try to help them understand the experience rather than just leaving them in the dark. You should always stay informed about new ideas. Ongoing education is a big thing. There's always a new theory, there's always new technology, there's always new insight that you can get that can improve your investigation. And you have to be constantly and consistently adhering to these ethical standards so that you can build trust within the community with the public, with historical organizations, and the scientific community and academics. So, ethics and skepticism are a little intertwined. Investigators should approach phenomena with curiosity, but also with the mindset of testing a hypothesis or considering natural explanations and avoiding bias. So you should always challenge assumptions. So you should question your initial impression and look for an alternative explanation. You have to use multiple tools, observers, and methods to confirm your data. And sometimes you just have to accept that some phenomena may just remain unexplained, and you can't rush to saying it's a ghost or it's supernatural. Paranormal research often attracts public attention. Maintaining professionalism in how investigations and findings are presented is essential. You have to avoid dramatic reenactments, misleading captions, or exaggerated claims. You have to clearly differentiate between research and entertainment focused ghost hunting. Educate the public on scientific methodology, natural explanations, and the difference between subjective perception and documented evidence. By doing so, you're going to protect the reputation of the field and emphasize research over spectacle. Now, many organizations, including volunteer based research groups, rely on individuals who assist with investigations. So you should always, provide thorough training on methodology, tools, and documentation. You should emphasize respectful engagement with the clients and the client's property. You need to reinforce the importance of skepticism, evidence, and reporting, detailed reporting. And you need to ensure that volunteers understand their role is research oriented, not necessarily thrill seeking. Volunteers are essential to gathering reliable data, but their training and ethical grounding are critical to maintaining credibility and safety. Without ethics, even the most advanced tools and careful methodology can't compensate for the loss of credibility or public trust. When researchers uphold these standards, they create foundation for meaningful scientific exploration of the unknown. Paranormal research is an intersection of curiosity, skepticism, and methodical investigation. The field demands rigorous documentation, awareness of psychological, neurological, environmental, and cultural influences, ethical responsibility toward participants and witnesses, and systematic use of tools and technology. By following structured methods, researchers contribute to a deeper understanding of anomalous phenomena, separating folklore and misperception from genuinely unexplained occurrences. Paranormal research is not about chasing ghosts, it's about chasing knowledge, understanding, and insight. Each observation, anomaly, and analysis adds to the growing body of evidence, enhancing the credibility and sophistication of the field. Now, you have to respect both the unknown and the people experiencing it. In doing so, we expand the boundaries of understanding while maintaining integrity and scientific rigor. And as always, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of They're Still Here. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our link tree in the show's description. And as always, stay curious, stay safe, and we will see you soon.
My name is Jessie. Thank you for tuning in to They're Still Here. Be sure to follow us on all our social media and join our Discord. Check our Linktree for all of our links. Our theme is SCP X7X, 6th Floor by Kevin MacLeod, and Compotech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Stay curious, stay safe. We will see you soon.